Welcome to the All Leafs Habs edition of the Aiming Five Hole podcast. And my friend Ryan here. Ryan, how's it going?
Okay. First of all, we're not going to talk about Leafs and Habs the entire time because then it would just be
I'm
a
going to have
gloating.
fun with talking
It would just
about.
be a gloating session for 30 minutes, and I don't feel like
Well,
I'm
I'm
up
not
for
sure
that.
it's going to be a gloating session, but I do know that somebody quit 3 minutes left in the game,
All
couldn't
right.
watch anymore.
Well, I quit. I quit not long after the Canadiens quit. It was it was 7-3, huh?
You-
They
It was a tale of two games, though. I was ready
yeah.
to
Look,
crucify the Leafs after the first period. That was like
after the first
disgraceful.
period, I was talking smack. I was having fun.
Yeah.
Then they gave up that first goal right at the beginning of the second period, and then that was all she wrote. It
Yeah.
was pretty pathetic.
Well, I wrote you that they needed one right there at the end of the second to put it within one. And I almost wrote you and Ron, and during that second intermission said, I think this is going to be at least 5-3 win. Of course, it ended up being 7-3, and we scored seven unanswered. But I wasn't going to be far off.
Well, look, what bummed me out about it was, for the last, since the middle of December, the Canadiens have been playing a really tight brand of hockey where they've been, very defensively responsible at both blue lines and haven't given up a lot of odd man rushes and didn't leave a lot of guys alone in the slot. And then they reverted back to that awful brand of hockey in the last two periods of the game that they had been playing for the
First
last.
time on record, the Leafs have come back from a 3-goal deficit in Montreal. All
Well,
time.
look, it's been 100 years. It was bound to happen eventually.
What a better time to happen than while we're doing this hockey podcast. So I can sit here and gloat on you.
Well, if you'd really thought that through in advance, you would have said no better time than if it had happened in the playoffs. But we'll take a
Yes.
regular season.
Yeah.
We'll take a regular season blown 3-goal lead.
I can't talk about playoffs. Playoffs.
Play. But yeah, it was a
But
terrible game. The Canadiens D looked awful. The Canadiens goaltending looked mediocre, uncharacteristically. Joseph Woll kept them in the game. It should have been 5-0 after the first period.
oh, no question. If it wasn't for Woll after that first period, the game would have been over within the first 10 minutes.
Yeah. So I was you can't feel too badly about having a good tandem of goalies like Stolars and Walls. So you got to be feeling good about that going into the playoffs.
Yeah,
I don't
I'd be
think either of those
happy to have
guys.
Stolhars back. That'd be nice to get him healthy. Now we've lost Tavares. Like, we got an infirmary report this year that's crazy.
I know, but they're still in first place.
Yeah, but I think that's it. We've talked about this. I think that's the Leafs are playing a different style of hockey. We've talked about this. It's this Berube style hockey that could be deemed, as a lot of people are saying, it's boring, but they're winning and you can't complain about it. They're first in the division. They've almost blown an opportunity in the last week when they lost those two games last week, playing terrible against uh, Dallas early in the week, playing mediocre and taking at least 2 points off of New Jersey, playing terrible last weekend. With the way Florida Panthers have been playing, we should be 8 points up on them, not 3.
Yeah.
And so that's a little disappointing. If I had a knock right now, that I would say that's my biggest problem. Again, still defensively in their own ends. Like, we're talking about the goaltending standing on their heads. If the goaltending isn't what we had right now, if we had goaltending we've had the last few years in the net, we wouldn't even be in a playoff spot right now. And that's a problem. And the other thing, up until Saturday's game against the Habs, the previous 8 goals that we've scored came from 3 players. We can't have that. We need some secondary scoring. I can't wait for Trey Leveland to make a trade here and get rid of, get somebody, some extra help in here that's going to be some secondary scoring and help this team make a push, because we're not winning in the playoffs if we can't get some scoring from other places, whether that's our point man or from the bottom 6 players. We're going to be dead in the water if somebody shuts down those first 2 lines in the playoffs.
I think that's fair. I think you need depth scoring to win in the playoffs. Absolutely. And you need to have your power play rolling.
Oh, their power play is disgraceful.
And so they're going to need to get that going too.
Well, and I'm not a big fan. There seem to be, we seem to be committed to this 5-man
Forward.
forwards unit for the power, but I'm not in love with it at any stretch of the imagination.
By the way,
And
if there's a bigger indictment of Morgan Riley, I don't know what it is. You're employing this guy to be a massive offensive defenseman in your power play quarterback, and you've benched him.
well, and I said it last week. I was teasing that there was a trade out there that I'd like the Leafs to consider, and it's Riley. He's underperforming. You mentioned it, and you didn't send it in the article, but we talked about the article that you read this week about his contract not going to age very well at $7.5 million. He's not a $7.5 million defenseman on any other team. I shouldn't say that. He's a $7.5 million on a lot of bottom end teams. He's not a $7.5 million player on a top team. And you can put some onus on him. He's not playing well. He's not playing up his potential. And he's being asked to play a different style of hockey this year was one thing. But we also have Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who's, look, I really like. He's got more grit. He's playing way more defensively than I had, but he's also not scoring a lot. He scored last week, but we need more out of those offensive defensemen. We need more. And look at the other indictment that I sent you a little thing. What was it? In the last two seasons, start of the 2023-24 season till middle of this season. Here's a little stat for all the Leafs fans out there that like me. With Morgan Riley in the lineup, we're 612. Without him in the lineup, we're 800.
In terms of what, points percentage?
Points percentage. With Jake
God.
McCabe in the lineup, we're 661. Without him, we're 412. Which defenseman are we more worried about being injured than that right now?
I don't want to put you on the spot, but you know what does McCabe make a year?
Oh, I think he's like in the $4 to $5 million range.
Wow. He's a bargain.
He's a bargain compared to what Riley's doing and what he means to the team right now.
Right.
But, I think Riley is, you give me gears all the time because I'm sort of all over the map about Marner, Nylander being traded. A couple of seasons ago, I was all downed on Nylander, and I continue to say there's got to be a for sale sign on Marner until they proves he can do something in the playoffs. But I would say right now, my top trade choice, if you had to put somebody on the Leafs lineup right now that could bring you a good return and that probably should be considered to be traded right now, it's Riley. The longest tenured Leafs, it's Riley. You trade him, you save that $7.5 million, you turn him into a couple, decent forward that can depth scoring and can help you. And then we've got this young kid in the minors, a defenseman that will come up and be offensive and whatnot. I can't remember his name right now.
All right, so I've got a trade for you, and this is going to come up. This is going to come up later in the episode, but I'm going to preview the topic. I've got a crazy trade to propose.
Okay,
and I'll see if you
play GM to my GM. I'll be the Leaf GM. You propose this trade to me.
I think the answer to this is no, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say. I'm pretty sure the answer to this is this: Marner and Riley and Robertson to Pittsburgh Penguins for Chris Letang and Yevgeny Malkin.
Fuck no. But I'll trade the Penguins Nick Robertson for a bag of pucks. You can have Nick Robertson. Just give us a 4th round draft choice.
4th round.
4th round.
A 7th compensatory pick or something.
A 4th round in 2030. How about that?
2030. Okay. All right.
No, I would not make that trade right now. There's no way.
All right. Well, let's talk about the Canadiens a little bit because they did rebound tonight. And while they, again, had a terrible, in my opinion, defensive game, even though they had some really good sustained offensive time in the New York zone for much of the game, and it was fun to watch as a result, they did get pinned in their zone a lot, and they gave up a lot of odd man rushes again. And I just don't like to see that creeping back into their game. And they've got games this week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday against good teams. I don't know if they're going to have an opportunity to practice and get those cobwebs out, get those bad habits out of the game again. On the plus side, it's great to see, Patrick Laine continuing to score goals. It's fantastic to see Juraj Slafkovsky start getting physical again and start skating north-south and looking confident doing it. Kirby Dach looks better every game. I'm out of the Kirby Dach like
And that's a
basement. Like
180 on him from the beginning of the season.
180. Like every time he skates the puck into the zone, he's doing it with authority, and something interesting is going to
He's
happen
got
with the
his,
puck.
there's no question that guy's got his confidence back big time.
Absolutely not. Absolutely, he does. The only thing I'd love to see him get a little bit better at, given his size and his soft hands, like you'd expect him to win more like
Buck
puck
battles.
battles in the corner. Like I'd like to see him
Is
come out
that
of
is that him still being a little too timid because he's
his
scared to get
knee
injured again?
because maybe I don't know. I would love to see him be like. To me, Yoel Armia is the best puck battle guy on the Canadiens, and I think there are a lot of teams in the league. If he were a better finisher, he'd be a fantastic player in this league
Mm.
because he wins a lot of battles and he kills penalties and blah
More
blah blah.
more so than Josh Anderson?
Yes, Josh Anderson. Josh Anderson is great using his body to make space
Yeah.
for the puck, and then he forgets the puck. But he's playing a lot better. But the best part about tonight's game, and it's what everybody was talking about on the in between period intermission shows and all that, was Arbor Jackeye beating the living snot out of Matt Rempe.
I
it
missed
was
that fight. I didn't see it.
it was but Mike Johnson at the NHL Network studio said we'll give the decision to we'll give this decision to Jackeye. I was like, that's a unanimous decision and it was borderline TKO.
Do you think he's regretting not fighting Reeves now on Saturday night after
No, I
waving him
don't
off
think
at
so.
3-up?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I
But it
don't
was
disagree with what he did, by the way. I would have done the same thing. Like, look at this. We're up 3-0,
yeah,
dude. Get out of here. See you later.
that that was brilliant. That
Yeah,
was
yeah.
brilliant.
So
But yeah, he that was a solid
talk to me
fight.
a little bit about this young goaltender, this Czech
Jakub
goaltender.
Dobish, 23 year
Holy
old
cow!
Czech
Like he
guy.
made two saves there in the overtime that were game saving,
Yeah,
huge saves. Like I wrote you in the middle of that, going, "Oh
yeah,
my god!" Like,
yeah. That was a crazy fun overtime to watch,
yeah.
and those were two amazing saves, right, one after another. He's really look. A couple of the goals he gave up tonight were not fantastic, but he wasn't to be
5-0.
faulted on. He wasn't to be faulted really on any of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, to have two good goaltenders. Although, like I said, I wasn't that impressed with Monty last night. But to have two good
Why? Because he gave
goaltenders in
up
the way they're
6 goals?
playing. What?
Why? Because he gave up 6 goals after
And
having
some of them weren't
been stalked a
fantastic.
3-goal lead?
Some of them were sort of long distance shots that I didn't think necessarily needed to go in. But um, yeah, I think the Canes are, last night notwithstanding and tonight notwithstanding, because I think they got an overtime win in a game they easily could have blown due to their defensive lapses. I think they're going to stay in this. I think they may not make the playoffs. I never said they were going to, but I think they're going to keep this
Hey,
pretty interesting.
they're right there. Like they're what, 1 point back of Columbus. Columbus. Let's talk. We were gonna say we're gonna talk about teams that are staying hot. Columbus
Yep.
continues to be staying hot, but there are 4 teams in the East vying for those last few playoff spots.
Yes. And it's
There's
great to watch Boston
yeah.
continually fall down the
Oh,
ladder.
they've just imploded. Like it's just we said this at Thanksgiving. We said it again at Christmas at the midway break.
If there's
We
a team
both
that's
sort
going
of
to
the
fall
team going to
out,
make the playoffs. They were going to be the ones, and they're doing everything in their power to make that happen.
it's true.
They're everything in their power. The other team that's sort of staying hot right now is Detroit. They coming back from so far, but they're 5 points back now. They've gone 8-2 in their last 10. They got to keep this pace up. I think there's probably too many teams for them to leapfrog in order to get up there, but they're making an interesting run at it. And all of a
Possibly.
sudden, the Rangers are 6-1-3 in their last 10, and they're back in the hunt. They're only 3 points back, but I'm not convinced they're going to turn this season around. What are they going to do? We talked last week about, teams now are starting to eye the trade deadline at the beginning of March. We're less than 2 months away. We have a 2-week break almost for the Four Nations. Something's
Yep.
going to start to happen here.
Pretty soon.
In the next 2 to 3 weeks, there've got to be some trades that are going to start to happen. Somebody's going to blink and make that first trade. and it's going to start the ball rolling. Where are teams like the Rangers, like Detroit? And before we got on the telecast, we were talking about the Penguins.
The
They're
Penguins, look, they're what,
what are they going to do?
6 points out with 5 or 6 teams to chase. That's a difficult.
That's a hill to climb when you got terrible goaltending and you can't seem to keep the puck out of your own net.
Terrible goaltending, decent D, not fantastic, decent D, who just aren't playing that great.
And
they don't have a shutdown pair.
Yeah, and an aging team that just doesn't seem to have the juice.
And other than
Crosby has done it again.
Yeah, I mean, what are they going to do come the trade deadline? They're the best assets they have are the untouchable ones.
Yeah, they're the best assets to trade are the few young guys they've got on the team that are actually worth something. You're not trading Crosby. No one's going to take on Melkin. No one's going to take on the contract that Letang's got. No one's going to take on Carlson's contract. Like, what do you do here? If you're Dubas now, what do you?
If you're dumbass, what are you going to do? Because no matter what you do, it's going to be wrong anyway.
Yeah, and he's done it again. He's made a mess of a team that wasn't far off making a playoffs, and they seemingly, because they signed these guys again, were trying to make a run for it.
Yep.
So,
and then there's Ottawa.
They look good.
They're playing like pretty strong brand of hockey right now. They're playing tough playoff like hockey. I think they're playing Berube hockey, and they don't even have Berube.
And I would say right now, if the playoffs were start today, the Leafs are playing them in the first round. I
wouldn't want to play them in the first round.
I'd be nervous about that. If Ullmark gets hot in the playoffs, that could be problematic.
Forget Ullmark. You've got this backup goalie who's they called him up, and he's winning games right, left, and center. Yeah. I'm not going to say his name because I want to hear you try to pronounce it.
You're doing it to me again, but let's be honest here. There's only one guy going to get play in the net unless he gets blown out 3 times, and it's going to be Ullmark. Yeah. So,
but Maryland is playing really, really well, and through Ullmark's injury, which sounded kind of serious.
Yeah.
This Maryland kid is just keeping them in it.
How do you pronounce his name? What's his name again?
Levi Marylandon or Levi Marylandon.
There's no shot that I'm mentioning. I'm pronouncing
it. I let you off the hook this time.
There's no shot. Dyslexic kid here ain't going to pronounce that
one. so let's talk a little bit about the West Coast, because the team, it's kind of my hometown team now, and I haven't really talked much about them at all, and that's the LA Kings. Sitting with 55 points, they're third in the division. They're pretty much a lock for a playoff spot, I'd say, at this point.
Yeah.
What happened? Like, this team didn't scream this kind of potential at the beginning of the year. We've mentioned it obliquely a couple of times, but we haven't dug into it. And this is a very deep and balanced team. You don't have superstars. You got Adrian Kempe, who's got 22 goals. That's pretty darn strong. And then you've got a whole bunch of guys like Fiala, Laferriere, Kopitar's having another great year, Fogla. They're all between 12 and 15 goals.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is, what's really interesting is they've got all of their top plus minus guys are all forwards.
Right.
They're very defensively responsible team. And I think that is their secret. They've got Anze Kopitar, Philip Deneau, and Alex Turcotte playing center. And they just don't give up a lot. They just don't give up a lot.
They're doing. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And then they're getting goaltending that nobody really thought was possible.
Well, we called at the beginning of the season, like, without Doughty and with this goaltending group of Kemper and Ritchie, like, really? Like, who would have thought we called them to miss the playoffs? Most people called them not to be able to make the playoffs. And Darcy Kemper's playing right now way better than anybody expected. He's.
And by the way, bears mentioning yet again, doing all of this without Drew Doughty.
Right.
Their top 3 defensemen are Gavrikov, Mikey Anderson, and Joel Edmondson. And I know I'm a bigger Edmondson fan than you are, because he played great for the Canadiens and maybe not not quite as great
Terrible
for
for the Leafs.
tomorrow. I'm just going to say not quite as great. I don't think it was terrible, but
We can say terrible.
you
We
can
can
say,
say terrible.
but he's still a 20-minute a night guy.
Yeah.
He's going to make you pay if you want to stand in front of the net.
Yeah.
This is just a tough team to play against.
Yep. And we talked about Byfield has just stepped his game up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. He's turning into a beast.
right.
He,
So
um, uh,
yeah, I think it's going to be interesting because really in the West, it's not as tight as it is in the East. Like there is really
no, there's only like
three teams vying for one spot. It's
for the last
Calgary.
spot.
One of the three teams of Calgary, Vancouver, and St. Louis is going to take that last spot of the three of them. I'm
Yep.
still saying it's St. Louis, but
What are you
that's,
basing that on?
I just think I've said it from the beginning of the season, so I'm sticking with my guns. I'm not going to switch gears here. Vancouver seems to be a bit dysfunctional because of what situation going there. TJ Miller is on
JT
the trade.
Miller. TJ
JT Miller,
Miller's a
sorry,
Canadian.
yeah, JT is on the trade deadlock. Look, he was almost pulled on Saturday. He was going to be a healthy scratch because it seemed like there was a trade in the works and it fell through. Nobody
Oh,
knows who it was for. But he was almost held out of the lineup because there seemingly was some interest there. Pedersen might be traded. There seems to be some dysfunction there. I'm still say that's going to swirl around and they're not going to
they're
get
not
in.
going to do anything.
Calgary, we have said from the beginning, this is another team, like you say, what are they going to do with the trade deadline coming? Are they going to push to make it in? They've said from the beginning of the season it's a rebuilding stage. They've played better than they were expected. Their goaltending has been strong.
Yeah, it does.
Talking about spreading it out through the whole lineup, they seem to be doing well. But I think if I'm Calgary, I stick with that guns. This is rebuilding. Let's trade a couple of these assets because they don't think they're going to be able to re-sign them.
Right. Well, let's
So
be
trade them. So
clear.
that almost to me, it's by default that St. Louis is going to get in there.
Right. Well, we wanted St. Louis to get in because we love the idea of them signing two offer sheets and having that be
Yeah.
a success story and then making offer sheets a bigger thing.
Right.
Now let's be honest, neither Dylan Holloway nor Philip Broberg are the reason that St. Louis,
Yeah, but they're
they're
playing
both
well.
playing well. They're both playing well, and Philip Broberg is playing like a top four defenseman, but it's not like they're leading
No.
the league in scoring or anything like that. But
I just think
look,
I think it's the other factors that are going to allow them to get in there versus I think Calgary's going to be trading some guys come to the deadline. So I think
yeah,
they'll fall off towards the end here. And I just think there's too much dysfunction going on in Vancouver because what you're reading and seeing and whatnot. I think there's going to be some trades there. It could be for the good and help them
yeah,
make a push and get in there, but I don't know. I'm just not feeling. Look at being a Canadian. I'd like to see one of the Canadian teams get in there and take that spot. I just don't see it happening.
right. Well, put our eggs in the basket. We'll put our eggs in the Edmonton basket, like I did at the beginning of the year.
There you go. I
Uh,
put them in the back. And look at we both put our basket in Edmonton. And look at lo and behold, Connor McDavid is the second all-time leading scorer for the Edmonton Oilers, passing Gary
and
Curry
now
this week,
facing a suspension.
and facing a suspension for that. It was a bad cross check, but he was
Well,
taking a beating. Did you see the replay of
I
that?
know, I know.
Oh,
And it has, I'm not sure. I don't want to misspeak, but I thought I'd read somewhere or heard somewhere that like the number of penalties he's drawn is way down from past seasons. Like he's just not getting the calls. So
right.
people are just saying, all right, well, if that's the case, we can just hack at him all we
Right,
want.
right.
And
Well,
I
it
guess
seems
he
to be
reached his
doing
breaking point.
it. I think he lost his cool the other night on that because I saw the play and I was dumbfounded that there wasn't a call in the other direction. It
Yeah.
was insane. So, but you're right, he's not getting the calls or whatnot. But it's I still say they look strong. I think we both agree. Look, they signed Klingberg to a contract. I think that's giving them some upside on the backside.
Is it?
If he's game well, look at he was a strong. He didn't play well in the 14 games he played for the Leafs last year. Hip injuries are bad especially for defensemen. If he regains any sense of the form he had previous to that when he was in Dallas, we all seen what he can do. He's a defensive defenseman, can add something back there. He's decent in his own end. I still say between now and the end of the trade line, they got to add some goaltender depth. They got
Yeah.
to put someone behind Skinner that if Skinner falters, that can go in the net and be and be a second buy. Maybe that's Gibson coming out of Anaheim. Who knows? But they got to
Yeah.
find somebody that back up Skinner. There, it seems like they're not going to give up on Skinner at this point. Hell, why should they? They're all of a sudden 8-2 in the last 10.
Well,
They're
look, if they've got the
playing
Evander
well.
Kane money, there's no reason why they can't go after John Gibson.
Yeah.
So
Yep. Yep. So
okay,
and they probably need somebody else on the back end too, or maybe they need they need another forward because the guys they brought in this year, Skinner's doing nothing. Henrique is that they brought in last year, the trade deadline is not producing very well. So they probably need a depth scorer as well. They probably need somebody on their bottom six as well. So they probably need another maybe Klintberg answers their defenseman woes. Probably not from a defensive perspective. They could probably use an upgrade in net on the back end of the net, and they probably need what the Leafs need is a depth scorer. They need some other scoring from other places.
okay, okay. All right. So here is a closing topic that I want to go over with you. And this topic, I think, is a good way to close the show. I think basically what we want to do is at this point, we're taking just a few weeks away from the Four Nations. Based on everything that you've seen in the time since the rosters came out, who is your first injury replacement for Canada, and who is your first injury replacement for the U.S.?
Wow.
Forward.
Yeah,
we'll go with.
Wow.
Maybe we'll do D next week, but right now,
It's got to be a forward.
Yep.
I was hoping you were going to say a goaltender because I'd still say that Thompson should be on this team.
Well, we'll do that. We'll do that. We'll do that in 2 weeks.
Yeah, from a forward perspective, I'd like to see Sheffley on this team. I'd like to see. I think if someone gets injured at this point, from a forward,
it's got to be Mark Scheifele.
Got to be Mark Scheifele. He's playing so well. He's playing well in Winnipeg. That team is just doing. He's got confidence. That you need somebody that's going to come in there that's sort of riding a high wave at the moment. That's confident. Yep. I think he's the guy I'd like to see on this team.
Okay.
And he's not exactly shy when it comes to taking the body, being aggressive and whatnot. So I think he can play a good all-around player.
That's kind of why I was leaning towards Tage Thompson.
Yeah. But I think Tage Thompson's a less benefit when it comes to their own end. I think Scheifele, for me, takes
that's true. And that's the reason that aspect of things actually was why I was thinking. And, I'm a homer, but I think Nick Suzuki deserves consideration as a two-way center. Who's playing at a point a game pace.
Yeah. But you know what I think though, when it comes to, if you're taking Scheifele or you're taking Nick Suzuki, when you look at the roster and who's on there, it also depends on who gets hurt. If a Marner gets hurt, Suzuki to me makes sense, right? Same type of shifty player, distributing the puck.
I think if Cirelli were to get hurt,
right,
Suzuki would be a good replacement, like a good third line center.
Yeah.
Third or fourth line center.
That'd be my US.
Who's your first forward replacement on the US?
Wow. I'm trying to think
of
who's
what I'm going to say.
Who are you going to tell me who yours are?
It's Cole Caulfield. There's no.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think way he's playing right now and showing some confidence as well and hitting his stride, he's got to be up there for sure. No, absolutely. I'm trying to think of who's not on this team. The other Canadian that probably should be on this team too, playing the way we just talked about when we talked about the West. Byfield could be on this team.
Quinn Byfield could be
on this team. Very well could be on this team. He'd be another guy you'd have to consider. Again, depends on who goes out, right?
Yeah.
Of what happens, who gets injured, and what position or role you're trying to fill. But I think if you took a Scheifele, a Byfield, Nick Suzuki, you're not going wrong.
No.
In those situations.
I think the first kind of guy you're looking for is a replacement, and I don't think maybe necessarily Cole Caulfield fits this mold, but a guy that you're like, oh, there's 90 seconds left in the game and we're protecting a 1-goal lead. That's your injury. That's your injury replacement. Number one criteria, I think.
Right? You think
Who do you trust? Who do you trust?
You don't think that the guys you've named to the team in your first 6 are those guys that you trust?
Oh, you do. But like, no matter what you do, no matter who you lose and who you need a replacement, I think the ability to throw anybody on the ice in the last 10 minutes of the game and then the last 90 seconds of the game.
Right.
That is a very key thing in a short tournament like this.
Right. Right. Well, you seem to know the Finnish players really, really well. So who's going to replace Hakanpää in the defense for Finland?
Oh God, I don't know.
There's a
Who's
topic
gonna-
for next week. Who's going to
Yeah,
replace
it's a topic.
Hakanpää
Who's
for
going to
Finland on the?
replace
Although he seems to
on
be
the
speeding
Leafs?
right now, so he might actually be okay. He actually seemingly he might make a return to the Leafs lineup soon.
Yeah.
But yeah,
All right.
yeah, that's a good topic. Let's go to the defense next week.
Next week we'll talk the
Defense and goaltending. My goaltending isn't going to change on the Leafs on the Canadian side.
no.
I think Thompson should be there, spades. But anyways, let's not belabor that point. Let's end it there. Had a good week, and hopefully your Habs continue to not blow 3-goal leads.
Yeah. Well,
My
and let's
Leafs
hope
get healthy.
Let's hope Toronto doesn't get into any 3-goal holes over the next week.
They seem to be. They're off to such slow starts every game. It's so frustrating. But oh well. Let's hope it's a better week. That's for sure. Lightning tomorrow night.
All right, buddy.
All righty. You have a great week. Good to see you.
You too, sir. Take
Talk
care.
to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.